He left without saying goodbye. Eleanor sat there in the silence, staring at the closed door, feeling the walls press in tighter than before. Her father coughed. She turned quickly, relief flooding through her, even though she knew better. His eyes were open. Barely, but open. He looked at her with the kind of clarity that only comes right before the end. "Eleanor," he whispered. She moved to his side, taking his hand. It felt like paper. "I'm here, Papa. Don't marry him." "I won't. Promise me." She swallowed hard. "I promise." "You're stronger than you think." His breathing rattled. "Stronger than me." "Don't talk like that. Someone better will come." His fingers tightened around hers. "Wait for someone who sees you." "Papa, promise." Tears burned her eyes. "I promise." He smiled, barely, then closed his eyes again. She was scraping frost off the inside of the window when she saw the rider. At first she thought she'd imagined it. Nobody traveled during storms like this. Nobody sane, anyway. But the shape moved closer, hunched against the wind, leading a horse that looked half dead from exhaustion. Eleanor grabbed the shotgun from above the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit her like a fist. "That's far enough," she shouted over the wind. The rider stopped. Slowly he pulled back his hood. A man, tall, bearded, scarred across one side of his face like something had tried to tear it off years ago. He looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than just the ride. "I need help," he said. His voice was rough, quiet, like he wasn't used to using it much. "I don't have any. My horse is dying." "Then you're both out of luck." He didn't move, just stood there in the snow, staring at her with eyes that looked too tired to lie. "Please." Eleanor's fingers stayed on the trigger. "Who are you?" Gideon Vale. The name meant nothing to her. "Where'd you come from?" He gestured vaguely toward the mountains. "North." "Nobody lives north of here." "I do." She studied him for a long moment. He didn't look like a thief, didn't carry himself like Silas, all smooth charm hiding rot underneath. He just looked broken. "Barn's around back," she finally said. "You can stay till the storm passes, then you leave." "Thank you." She didn't respond, just watched him lead his horse toward the barn, then went back inside and bolted the door. Her father's breathing sounded worse. "What?" Gideon stayed in the barn for 2 days. Eleanor brought him food once, stale bread and weak coffee, but didn't talk beyond the necessities. He didn't push, just nodded his thanks and went back to tending his horse. On the 3rd day, her father started dying faster. She knew the signs, the breathing that turned shallow and fast, the skin that went gray, the way his eyes didn't quite focus anymore. She sat beside him, helpless, watching the man who raised her slip away inch by inch. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Papa." He didn't respond. A knock at the door made her jump. She wiped her eyes quickly, grabbed the shotgun again, and opened it. Gideon stood there, snow covering his shoulders. "I heard you crying." "I wasn't." "I heard you." Eleanor's throat tightened. "What do you want?" "Is he dying?" She didn't answer. Gideon looked past her, into the cabin, at the man lying motionless on the bed. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Grief. "I lost someone too," he said quietly. "My wife." Eleanor's grip on the shotgun loosened slightly. "I'm sorry. 3 years ago. Left me with 3 daughters and no idea how to raise them." He met her eyes. "I've been failing at it ever since." She didn't know what to say to that. "I came down from the valley looking for help," Gideon continued. "I've tried hiring governesses, tutors, housekeepers. None of them stay. The valley's too remote. The winters are too hard. The girls are too—" He paused, grieving. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you need help too." Eleanor laughed, sharp and bitter. "I don't need anything from you." "Yes, you do." He nodded toward the cabin. "When he dies, what happens to you?" "That's none of your business. Silas Boone happens to you." She froze. Gideon's expression didn't change. "I saw him leaving the other day, recognized him from town." Everyone knows what kind of man he is. If you're here to make the same offer, I'm not. He pulled something from his coat, a small leather pouch. $500. Enough to clear your father's debt and pay for a proper burial. Eleanor stared at the pouch like it might explode. What's the catch? Marry me. There it was again. She took a step back. I don't even know you. I know. You're a stranger. I know. This is insane. I know. Gideon didn't smile, didn't try to charm her, just stood there, exhausted and desperate and brutally honest. I need someone to help raise my daughters. You need money to survive. We can help each other. By getting married. It wouldn't be that kind of marriage. He looked uncomfortable. Separate rooms, no expectations. You'd have your space, your freedom. If you hated it, you could leave come spring. Why would I believe you? Because I don't have the energy to lie anymore. The wind howled between them. Eleanor's mind raced. This was insane, completely insane. Marrying a man she didn't know, moving to some hidden valley, raising children who weren't hers. Everything about it screamed mistake, but the alternative was Silas. And Silas wasn't offering separate rooms or freedom or the option to leave. I need to think about it, she said. You've got until morning. After that, I'm leaving. Gideon turned to go, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm not a good man, but I'm not cruel, and I keep my promises. He walked back to the barn without waiting for a response. Eleanor closed the door, her heart pounding. She looked at her father, his breathing so faint she could barely hear it. What do I do, Papa? She whispered. He didn't answer, but somewhere deep down she already knew. Her father died just before dawn. Eleanor had been dozing in the chair beside his bed when she woke to silence. Not the scary silence of held breath before a cough, but the permanent silence that follows the last one. She sat there for a long time, holding his cold hand, crying without making a sound. When the sun finally rose, she kissed his forehead, pulled the blanket over his face, and walked out to the barn. Gideon was saddling his horse. I'll do it, Eleanor said. He stopped, turned to look at her. I'll marry you. I'll help with your daughters. She swallowed hard. I'll try. Gideon nodded slowly. Your father? Gone. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just don't lie to me about anything, ever. I won't. And if I want to leave, you can leave. Just like that? Just like that. Eleanor took a shaky breath. When do we go? After we bury him, properly. Something in her chest cracked at that. The kindness of it. The decency. Silas would have told her to leave the body and run. Gideon was offering her time to grieve. Thank you, she whispered. They buried her father that afternoon in the frozen ground behind the cabin. Gideon dug while Eleanor wrapped the body. They didn't have a preacher, so Eleanor said a few words, her voice breaking halfway through. Gideon stood quietly beside her, head bowed, not intruding on her grief. When it was done, they went back inside. We should do this now, Gideon said, before I lose my nerve. Do what? Get married. Eleanor blinked. Now? Here? Unless you want to wait. There's no preacher. Don't need one, just need witnesses and intent. I'll write it down, we'll both sign it, and it'll be legal enough. He pulled out paper and a pencil. Not romantic, but it'll work. Eleanor almost laughed. Nothing about this was romantic. Her father was dead less than 3 hours. She was marrying a stranger out of desperation. The cabin smelled like death and the wind wouldn't stop howling, but she'd made her choice. Okay, she said, let's do it. Gideon wrote quickly, his handwriting surprisingly neat. On this day, Gideon Vale and Eleanor Graves enter into marriage as equal partners. Terms: shared responsibilities, separate living quarters, mutual respect, and the freedom to dissolve the arrangement if either party wishes. Signed in good faith. He signed his name, then handed her the pencil. Eleanor stared at the paper. This was it, the moment everything changed. She signed. Gideon folded the paper carefully and tucked it into his coat. We'll leave in the morning. Storm should be clear by then. What about Silas? He'll come looking. Let him. By the time he figures out you're gone, you'll be in the valley. He won't follow. Nobody follows there. Why not? Because they can't find it. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She packed what little she owned, clothes, her mother's sewing kit, a photograph of her parents on their wedding day. Everything fit into one bag. Outside, the wind had finally died down. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark mountains rising in the distance. Somewhere up there was a valley. A house. 3 girls who didn't know she existed. A life she couldn't even imagine. She pressed her hand against the cold glass. "I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered. "I hope I'm making the right choice." The stars didn't answer. Behind her, the cabin creaked and settled, already starting to feel like a memory. By dawn, she'd be gone. By dawn, Eleanor Graves would become Eleanor Vale, and nothing would ever be the same. They left before sunrise. Eleanor took one last look at the cabin, the grave, the life she was leaving behind. Then she climbed onto Gideon's horse, sitting behind him, and they rode toward the mountains. The journey was brutal. For days they climbed through passes so narrow, one wrong step would send them plummeting. Snow buried the trail. Wind screamed between the peaks. Wolves howled at night, close enough that Eleanor could see their eyes reflecting the firelight. Gideon barely spoke. He'd point to show her where to step, help her down from the horse when they camped, share his food without comment. But he didn't try to make conversation, didn't ask about her life, didn't offer details about his. It should have made her nervous. Instead, it was almost comforting. No false promises. No pretending. Just 2 people doing what they had to do. On the 5th day, they reached the top of a ridge. "There," Gideon said, pointing down. Eleanor followed his gaze and froze. The valley spread out below them like something from a dream. Massive barns, fenced pastures, hundreds of cattle, workers moving between buildings, and at the center of it all, overlooking everything like a fortress built against loneliness itself, a house. Not a cabin, not a shack. A house. Eleanor's breath caught. "You said you were a cattleman." "I am." "You didn't say you were rich." Gideon was quiet for a moment. "If I'd shown up dressed like Silas, would you have trusted me?" "No. That's why I didn't." Eleanor turned to look at him. "You lied." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." His jaw tightened. "If that makes you want to leave." "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" She looked back at the valley, her mind racing. He was right. If he'd arrived in expensive clothes, talking about his empire, she would have assumed he was just another Silas, just another man trying to buy her. But he'd hidden it. Come to her as an equal. Offered honesty even when it hurt. "I'm saying," she said slowly, "that you're more complicated than I thought." Gideon almost smiled. "So are you." They rode down into the valley in silence. Workers stopped to stare as they passed. Some removed their hats, others whispered. Eleanor could feel their eyes on her, judging, measuring, wondering how long she'd last. The house loomed larger as they approached. 2 stories. Wraparound porch. Windows that caught the late afternoon light. And standing on that porch, watching them arrive. 3 girls. The smallest one, maybe 6 years old, clung to the railing with wide, terrified eyes. The middle one, 9 or 10, stood half hidden behind her older sister, barely visible. And the oldest stood at the front, arms crossed, chin raised, glaring at Eleanor like she was an invader. Gideon dismounted, then helped Eleanor down. "Girls," he said quietly, "this is Eleanor. She's going to be staying with us." The youngest started crying. The middle one vanished completely behind her sister. The oldest stepped forward, her voice sharp and cold. "You bought a replacement." Gideon flinched. "Abigail, that's what you did, isn't it? Went down to town and bought yourself a new wife like she's livestock. It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Eleanor watched the girl, Abigail, and saw it immediately. The anger, the grief, the terror underneath. She wasn't cruel. She was drowning. "Your father didn't buy me," Eleanor said quietly. "We made a deal. He needed help. I needed a way to survive, that's all." Abigail's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe you're here out of the goodness of your heart?" No, I expect you to believe I'm here because I had no other choice, same as you. The girl's mask cracked slightly. Gideon cleared his throat. Eleanor, these are my daughters, Abigail, Norah, and Daisy. Norah peeked out from behind Abigail just long enough for Eleanor to see her face, pale, thin, scared. Daisy kept crying. Hi, Eleanor said softly. Nobody responded. Gideon looked like he wanted to disappear. Let's go inside. He picked up Eleanor's bag and headed for the door. The girls scattered like startled birds. Eleanor stood alone on the porch, staring at the mountains rising behind the house, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Inside, she could hear Abigail's voice, sharp and angry. She's not staying in Mama's room. Gideon's response was too quiet to hear. Eleanor took a deep breath, picked up her bag, and walked inside. The house was beautiful, and it felt completely, utterly haunted. The house had 12 rooms, and every single one felt empty. Eleanor stood in the entrance hall while Gideon disappeared upstairs with her bag, leaving her alone with furniture that probably cost more than her father's entire ranch. Polished wood, thick rugs, a chandelier hanging from the ceiling that caught the fading sunlight and threw it across the walls in fractured patterns. It was the kind of house that should have felt warm. Instead, it felt like a museum dedicated to grief. Footsteps creaked overhead, whispers filtered through the floorboards. Abigail's voice, sharp and insistent, followed by Gideon's lower rumble. Eleanor couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. The tone said everything. She walked further into the house, her boots echoing on the hardwood. The parlor was immaculate, not a speck of dust anywhere, like someone spent hours cleaning just to avoid thinking. A piano sat against one wall, sheet music still open on the stand. Eleanor moved closer, tilting her head to read the title. Moonlight Sonata. She used to play it every night. Eleanor spun around. Abigail stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with those cold, evaluating eyes. Your mother? Eleanor asked. Don't talk about her. It wasn't. You were thinking about her, I can tell. Abigail stepped into the room. Everyone thinks about her when they see the piano, like she's still here, like she might walk in any second and start playing. Eleanor didn't know what to say to that. Abigail circled the room slowly, her fingers trailing along the furniture. Papa hired 6 different women after Mama died. Governesses, teachers, women who smiled too much and promised they'd stay forever. She stopped, turning to face Eleanor. They all left, usually within a month. One lasted 3 weeks. Another made it 6 days before she packed her bags and walked back down the mountain by herself. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to leave too, and I want you to know I won't be surprised when you do. The girl's voice was hard, but her eyes were desperate. Eleanor recognized that look. She'd seen it in the mirror after her mother died, after the ranch failed, after her father started coughing blood. It was the look of someone who'd stopped hoping because hope hurt too much. I'm not those other women, Eleanor said quietly. You're exactly like them. You saw an opportunity and you took it. Papa's rich, the house is nice, and once you realize how miserable it is here, you'll run just like they did. Maybe I will. Abigail blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Eleanor moved closer. Maybe this place will be too hard. Maybe your father will turn out to be cruel. Maybe I'll hate every second of being here and leave the moment the snow melts. She held the girl's gaze. But I'm not going to lie to you and pretend I know what's going to happen. All I know is I'm here now, and I'm going to try. Try what? Whatever needs doing. Abigail's jaw tightened. For a second, Eleanor thought she might say something real, something honest, but then the mask slammed back into place. Don't touch the piano, Abigail said coldly. Don't go in Mama's sewing room. Don't try to be our mother. You're not. You never will be. She turned and walked out before Eleanor could respond. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Eleanor sank onto the piano bench, exhausted down to her bones. She'd been at the house less than an hour and already felt like she'd been fighting a war. Footsteps on the stairs made her look up. Gideon appeared, looking just as tired as she felt. Your room's ready, he said. Upstairs, second door on the left. I put you at the far end of the hall, away from everything. Away from her room. It wasn't a question. Gideon's expression tightened. Abigail said we should burn all of Sarah's things, get rid of everything. I couldn't do it. So I locked the door instead and pretended that solved something. Eleanor stood slowly. How long ago did she die? 4 years? And you haven't touched anything? No. Gideon? I know. He rubbed his face with both hands. I know it's not healthy. I know the girls need to move on. I know I need to move on. But every time I try, it feels like I'm erasing her, like I'm saying she didn't matter. Eleanor understood that. She'd felt the same way packing up her father's things. She mattered, Eleanor said. But you're still alive, so are your daughters. I'm aware. Are you? Gideon looked at her sharply. Eleanor didn't back down. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you locked away your grief and expected your daughters to do the same. And now Abigail's drowning in it. Nora's too scared to breathe, and Daisy doesn't remember what it's like to feel safe. You've been here an hour. Doesn't take long to see. Gideon's hands curled into fists. You think I don't know I'm failing them? You think I don't see it every single day? I brought you here because I'm out of options, Eleanor. Not because I wanted help, because I needed it. The rawness in his voice made her chest ache. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I shouldn't have. No, you're right. He sat down heavily in one of the chairs. I don't know what I'm doing. Haven't known for years. I just keep moving forward because stopping means admitting I've already lost them. Eleanor sat across from him. You haven't lost them. Abigail hates me. Abigail's terrified. There's a difference. And Norah won't talk to anyone because nobody's taught her it's safe to. And Daisy, his voice cracked. Daisy still asks when her mama's coming home. Eleanor's throat tightened. How old was she when Sarah died? 2. So she doesn't really remember her? No, just the idea of her. Gideon looked up, his eyes red. Is that worse? Not remembering or remembering too much? Eleanor thought about her own mother, dead 10 years now. The memories were fading. Soon there'd be nothing left but the shape of her voice and the feeling of her hands braiding hair. I don't know, Eleanor admitted. Both hurt. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Gideon stood. I should let you rest. Dinner's at 6. One of the ranch hands' wives cooks for us. Martha. She's prickly, but the food's good. Okay. And Eleanor? She looked up. Thank you for being honest. He hesitated. Most people just tell me what they think I want to hear. I'm not most people. I'm starting to realize that. He left. Eleanor sat alone in the parlor as shadows stretched across the floor, listening to the house creak and settle around her. Somewhere upstairs, someone was crying. She closed her eyes and wondered what the hell she'd signed up for. Dinner was a disaster. The dining room was enormous. Table built for 12, fancy china, cloth napkins folded into triangles. Martha had outdone herself with roasted chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, the kind of meal Eleanor hadn't seen in years. But nobody was eating. Gideon sat at the head of the table, pushing food around his plate. Abigail sat to his right, glaring at Eleanor with barely concealed hostility. Norah sat beside Abigail, eyes down, hands folded in her lap. And Daisy sat in a chair with extra cushions, tears streaming down her face for no reason Eleanor could figure out. Daisy, eat your dinner, Gideon said quietly. The little girl shook her head. You need to eat. More crying. Gideon looked helpless. Please, sweetheart. Just a few bites. I want Mama. The words hung in the air like smoke. Abigail's fork clattered against her plate. Mama's dead, Daisy. She's not coming back. How many times do we have to tell you? Abigail, Gideon started. What? It's true. She needs to understand she's 6 years old, and she needs to stop crying every night for someone who isn't here. Norah flinched. Daisy cried harder. Eleanor set down her fork. Abigail, can you pass the salt? The girl stared at her. What? The salt. It's by your plate. Are you serious right now? Very. Abigail grabbed the salt shaker and shoved it across the table. Here. Happy? Thank you. Eleanor salted her potatoes carefully, like nothing was wrong. These are good. Your father said Martha cooks for you? Abigail's eyes narrowed. Why do you care? Just making conversation. We don't need conversation. We need to be left alone. Abigail, Gideon said sharply. That's enough. No, it's not enough. You brought a stranger into our house and expect us to pretend like everything's fine. It's not fine, Papa. It's never going to be fine. She stood abruptly and walked out. Norah immediately followed, moving so quickly she knocked over her water glass. It spilled across the table, soaking the tablecloth. I'm sorry, Norah whispered, her voice barely audible. Then she ran. Gideon looked like he'd been punched. Daisy kept crying. Eleanor stood, walked around the table, and knelt beside the little girl's chair. Hey, she said softly. Daisy, right? The girl nodded through her tears. I'm Eleanor. I know you don't know me. I know this is scary. Eleanor pulled a handkerchief from her pocket, one of her mother's, embroidered with tiny flowers. But can I tell you a secret? Daisy sniffled. What? I'm scared too. The crying slowed slightly. I came to a new house with people I don't know, and everything feels big and weird and wrong. So I get it. Being scared is okay. Mama used to sit with me when I was scared. Eleanor's chest ached. I bet she did. I bet she was really good at making you feel better. She sang. What did she sing? I don't remember. That's okay. Daisy wiped her nose on her sleeve. Are you going to leave like the other ladies? Eleanor glanced at Gideon, who was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. I don't know, Eleanor said honestly. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm here right now, and right now is all I've got. Daisy thought about that. Can you sit with me while I eat? Sure. Eleanor stayed beside her while the little girl slowly ate her dinner. Gideon didn't speak, just watched his youngest daughter eat for the first time in days, looking like he might break apart from relief. When Daisy finally finished, Eleanor helped her down from the chair. Can I go play now? Go ahead, Gideon said quietly. Daisy ran off, her footsteps echoing up the stairs. Eleanor started gathering plates. You don't have to do that, Gideon said. Someone has to. Martha will handle it in the morning. I'm handling it now. She carried the plates to the kitchen, Gideon following behind her with the rest. They worked in silence, cleaning up the disaster of a dinner, neither of them knowing what to say. Finally, Gideon spoke. I'm sorry about Abigail, about all of it. Don't be. She's allowed to be angry. She shouldn't take it out on you. Where else is she going to take it? Eleanor dried a plate carefully. Her mother's dead. You're barely keeping it together. Someone has to hold the rage. Might as well be her. Gideon leaned against the counter, exhausted. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe you can't. That's not reassuring. I'm not here to reassure you. Eleanor set the plate down. I'm here to help raise your daughters. That's the deal. Not to fix your grief, not to replace your wife, not to make everything magically better, just to show up and do the work. And if the work's impossible, then we fail together. Something in his expression shifted. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer. Someone who'd make everything feel easier. Eleanor almost laughed. I'm not soft, and I don't make anything easier. If that's what you wanted, you married the wrong woman. No, Gideon said quietly. I don't think I did. They finished cleaning in silence. When Eleanor finally went upstairs, the house felt different. Still haunted. Still heavy with grief. But maybe, just maybe, survivable. Gosh, the first week was hell. Eleanor woke every morning before dawn out of habit, then realized she had no idea what she was supposed to do. Back home, she'd tended animals, fixed fences, patched holes in the cabin roof. Here there were workers for all of that. Her only job was the girls, and the girls wanted nothing to do with her. Abigail avoided her completely. If Eleanor entered a room, Abigail left. If Eleanor spoke, Abigail ignored her. Once Eleanor tried to help with something Abigail was carrying, and the girl literally threw it on the ground rather than accept assistance. Norah was worse in different ways. She didn't avoid Eleanor. She just became invisible, stayed in corners, moved silently, answered questions with nods or shakes of her head. Eleanor tried everything, asked about her interests, offered to read to her, suggested they bake something together. Nothing worked. The girl was a ghost haunting her own house. Daisy was the only one who showed any interest, but it was the desperate, clinging kind that made Eleanor's skin crawl. The little girl followed her everywhere, asking constant questions, needing validation every 5 seconds, crying the moment Eleanor left the room. It was exhausting, and Gideon was no help. He spent most of his time outside managing the ranch, throwing himself into work the same way Eleanor used to, avoiding the hard parts by staying busy. Eleanor understood it, but it pissed her off anyway. On the 8th night, she cornered him in his study. "We need to talk." Gideon looked up from the ledger he was reviewing. "About what?" "About the fact that you're hiding." "I'm working." "You're avoiding your daughters." His jaw tightened. "I see them at breakfast and dinner." "Barely. You eat in chiens, then disappear." Eleanor crossed her arms. "You brought me here to help, but you won't actually be here long enough to see if it's working." "Is it working?" "No." "Then what difference does it make if I'm there?" Eleanor stared at him. "You really believe that? You think your daughters don't notice you're gone?" "They barely notice I exist. Because you've spent 4 years teaching them you don't want to." Gideon stood abruptly. "That's not fair. Neither is abandoning 3 little girls because you're too grief-stricken to figure out how to be their father. I'm doing the best I can. Your best isn't good enough." The words hung between them like a slap. Gideon's face went hard. "You've been here a week, Eleanor. You don't get to judge." "I'm not judging. I'm telling you what I see." She stepped closer. "Abigail's drowning. Norah's disappearing. Daisy's so desperate for attention, she'll take it from anyone, and you're so busy running from your own pain that you can't see theirs. Get out." "No." "I said, get out." And I said no. Eleanor held her ground. "You can fire me. Send me back down the mountain. Tear up our agreement. But until you do, I'm staying, and I'm going to keep telling you the truth even when it hurts, because that's what you need. Someone who won't just nod and smile and pretend you're doing fine when you're not." Gideon's hands were shaking. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because if I stop moving," his voice cracked, "if I stop moving long enough to feel it, I'll fall apart. And if I fall apart, there's nothing left. No father, no ranch, nothing." Eleanor's anger dissolved. She'd been there. After her mother died, she'd kept moving because stopping meant drowning. After the ranch failed, she'd kept working because giving up meant admitting defeat. After her father got sick, she'd kept fighting because surrender meant death. She understood. "You won't fall apart," she said quietly. "You don't know that. I do. Because I did. I fell apart when my mother died. I fell apart when my father got sick. I fell apart the night I signed that paper and married you." She moved closer. "And I'm still here. Falling apart doesn't kill you, Gideon. Staying broken does." He looked at her with so much pain in his eyes she almost couldn't stand it. "I don't know how to be what they need. Neither do I, but we can figure it out together. And if we can't, then we fail together. But at least we tried." Gideon sank back into his chair, covering his face with his hands. Eleanor let him sit with it. After a long moment, he spoke. "What do you need from me?" "Show up, be present, stop hiding behind work and be their father." "I don't know if I can." "Try anyway." He looked up at her. "You're relentless." "You hired me for a reason." "I'm starting to regret it." Eleanor almost smiled. "Good. Means I'm doing something right." Yes. The next morning, Gideon ate breakfast with them. Actually ate. Actually talked. Asked Abigail about a book she was reading. Listened to Daisy describe a dream she'd had. Even tried to get Norah to speak, though that didn't work. It wasn't much, but it was something. Abigail noticed. Eleanor could see it in the way the girl's shoulders relaxed slightly. The way she answered her father's questions with actual words instead of grunts. Progress. Tiny. Fragile. But progress. After breakfast, Eleanor decided to tackle the house. It was too clean, too perfect, like a museum where nobody actually lived. She needed to change that. She started with the parlor, moving furniture around, opening curtains that had been closed for years, letting light flood in. Then she went through the kitchen, rearranging things so they made sense, throwing out dried herbs that were years old, making the space functional instead of decorative. She was in the middle of reorganizing the pantry when she heard footsteps behind her. Norah stood in the doorway, watching. Eleanor pretended not to notice, just kept working. After a few minutes, the girl spoke. Her voice was so quiet, Eleanor almost missed it. "You're moving everything." Eleanor turned slowly. "Yeah. Is that okay?" Norah shrugged. "If it bothers you, I can put it back." "It doesn't bother me." She hesitated. "Mama used to keep the flower up high. You moved it down. Is that where it should be?" "No, she couldn't reach it. Papa had to get it for her every time." The ghost of a smile crossed Norah's face. "She used to get mad about it." Eleanor smiled too. "Then it's better where it is now." Norah nodded. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Norah spoke again. "Do you need help?" Eleanor's heart jumped. "Sure, if you want." The girls stepped into the pantry. They worked together quietly, Norah pointing out where things used to be, Eleanor explaining why she was moving them. It wasn't much conversation, but it was more than they'd had all week. When they finished, Norah looked around the organized pantry with something almost like satisfaction. "It's better," she said. "Think so?" "Yeah." She glanced at Eleanor. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not trying to make everything the same." Eleanor understood what she meant. Everyone else probably tried to keep the house exactly as Sarah left it. Frozen in time. A shrine to someone who wasn't coming back. "Change isn't bad," Eleanor said gently. "It's just different." Norah thought about that. Then she nodded and left. Eleanor stood alone in the pantry, feeling like she'd just won a battle she didn't know she was fighting. That afternoon, Daisy found her in the garden. "Eleanor?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Can you teach me something?" Eleanor set down the rake she'd been using. "What do you want to learn?" "How to be brave." The request broke Eleanor's heart. She knelt down to Daisy's level. "What makes you think you're not brave?" "I cry all the time. Abigail says brave people don't cry." "Abigail's wrong." Daisy's eyes widened. "You can't say that." "Why not?" "Because she's the oldest. She knows everything." Eleanor shook her head. "Being oldest doesn't mean knowing everything. It just means you've been around longer." She took Daisy's small hands in hers. "Crying doesn't make you weak, Daisy. Sometimes crying is the bravest thing you can do." "Really? Really? It means you're feeling something, and feeling something is always braver than feeling nothing at all." Daisy seemed to consider this. "Were you brave when your papa died?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "I tried to be." "Did you cry?" "Every day." "But you're still here." "Yeah, I'm still here." Daisy threw her arms around Eleanor's neck suddenly, hugging her with the fierce desperation of a child who'd been starving for affection. Eleanor hugged her back, blinking away tears. When Daisy finally pulled away, she looked serious. "I'm glad you didn't leave." "Me too, sweetheart." "The other ladies left because we were too sad." "Well, I'm pretty sad too, so maybe we can be sad together." Daisy smiled. It was small and fragile, but real. "Okay." She ran off to play, leaving Eleanor kneeling in the dirt, wondering how children could break your heart and mend it in the same breath. By the end of the second week, something had shifted. It wasn't fixed, not even close, but the house felt different, less like a tomb, more like a place where people actually lived. Norah started helping Eleanor with small tasks, nothing big, just handing her things, pointing out where items belonged. Small moments of trust building slowly. Daisy stopped crying quite as much, started playing instead of clinging, still needed reassurance, but not every 5 seconds. Even Abigail's hostility had shifted. She still avoided Eleanor, still made cutting remarks when forced to interact, but there was less venom in it, more exhaustion than anger. Gideon noticed. One night after the girls went to bed, he found Eleanor on the porch. "You're good with them," he said. Eleanor shrugged. "I'm trying." "It's working." "Some days." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear over the mountains. "I meant what I said," Gideon said quietly. "About you being free to leave. If you want to go, I don't." He looked at her, surprised. "You don't?" "Not yet, anyway." Eleanor wrapped her arms around herself. "Ask me again in a month. I might change my mind." "Fair enough." More silence. Then Eleanor spoke. Your daughters aren't broken, Gideon. They're just grieving. There's a difference. I know. Do you? He thought about that. I'm starting to. Good. Gideon hesitated, then said, Thank you for not giving up on them. On us. I made a promise. To me? To myself. Eleanor looked out at the dark valley. I promised I'd try to build something here, even if it's hard, even if it hurts, because running away is easy, and I'm tired of taking the easy way out. Gideon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm glad you're here, Eleanor. It was the first time he'd said it, the first time it felt true. Eleanor didn't respond, just stood beside him in the darkness, watching the valley sleep, and hoped like hell she could keep her promise. Because deep down, she was starting to realize something terrifying. She didn't want to leave anymore. This broken, grieving, impossible family was starting to feel like home, and that scared her more than anything. The snow came back with a vengeance in late February. Eleanor woke to find the valley buried under 3 feet of fresh powder, more falling every hour. The workers struggled to reach the barns. The cattle huddled together in the fields, their breath forming clouds in the frozen air. And the mountain passes that connected the valley to the outside world disappeared completely beneath white. They were sealed in. Gideon stood at the window, watching the storm, his jaw tight. How long? Eleanor asked. Could be days, could be weeks. He didn't look at her. Depends on how bad it gets. We have enough supplies? Food, yes. Medicine, meat. He trailed off. We should be fine. Should be. Eleanor didn't like the sound of that. The girls took the snow differently. Daisy was thrilled, running from window to window to watch the flakes fall. Norah seemed anxious, but tried to hide it, staying close to Abigail. And Abigail wore her usual mask of indifference, though Eleanor caught her glancing at the mountains more than once. We're trapped, Abigail said at breakfast, her tone casual but her knuckles white around her fork. We're safe, Gideon corrected. There's a difference. Safe and trapped feel the same when you can't leave. Eleanor spoke before Gideon could respond. Being stuck somewhere isn't the same as being trapped. Trapped means you don't have a choice. We have everything we need right here. Abigail looked at her with that sharp, evaluating gaze. You would say that. You chose to come to the middle of nowhere and hide. I chose to survive. By running away. By making a deal. Eleanor met the girl's eyes. Same as you're doing right now, acting tough so nobody sees you're scared. Abigail's face flushed. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. And that's okay. Stop pretending you understand me. I'm not pretending anything. I'm just paying attention. For a second, Abigail looked like she might throw something. Then she shoved back from the table and walked out. Gideon sighed. You don't have to engage with her when she's like this. Yes, I do. Someone needs to. She's impossible when she gets going. She's 14 and terrified. Of course she's impossible. Eleanor started clearing plates. You want her to stop acting like that? Stop treating her like she's a problem to avoid. I don't. You do. Every time she gets difficult, you shut down. So she gets more difficult to get a reaction. It's a cycle. Gideon looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Norah spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Abigail gets scared during storms. Both adults turned to look at her. Nora's face went red, but she continued. Mama died during a storm, in the winter. Abigail found her. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Found her? Gideon's expression went dark. Sarah had pneumonia. I thought she was getting better. I went out to check on the cattle during a blizzard, and when I came back, he stopped. Abigail had been sitting with her, trying to wake her up. Eleanor felt sick. No wonder the girl was impossible. No wonder she pushed everyone away. She'd spent 4 years carrying that memory alone. Does she talk about it? Eleanor asked. Never. Have you tried? She won't let me. Then maybe she needs someone who isn't you to try. Gideon looked at her. You? Maybe. Or maybe she just needs to know it's okay to fall apart. Eleanor glanced at Norah, who was watching them with those huge, scared eyes. All of you do. Before anyone could respond, Daisy ran into the room, her face bright with excitement. Can we build a snowman? The shift in mood was so abrupt Eleanor almost laughed. Sure, sweetheart, Gideon said, clearly grateful for the distraction. After lunch. Can Eleanor help? Eleanor blinked. It was the first time Daisy had directly asked for her participation in something. If she wants to, Gideon said carefully. All three of them looked at Eleanor. She smiled despite everything. I'd love to. Daisy beamed and ran off to get her coat. Norah hesitated, then quietly said, I'll help too. It wasn't much, just an offer to build a snowman, but it felt like progress. They spent the afternoon in the snow, all of them except Abigail, who refused to come outside. Eleanor and Norah rolled the base while Gideon helped Daisy with the middle section. The snow was perfect for packing, wet and heavy. Daisy chattered constantly, her breath coming out in little puffs. Mama used to make snow angels. Do you know how to make snow angels, Eleanor? I do. Can you show me? Eleanor lay down in the snow and swept her arms and legs out, feeling ridiculous and happy at the same time. When she stood up, there was a perfect angel shape in the powder. Daisy clapped. Now me! She threw herself down and made her own angel, laughing the whole time. Norah watched from a few feet away, not participating, but not leaving either. You want to try? Eleanor asked her. Norah shook her head. That's okay. You can just watch if you want. The girl looked surprised that Eleanor wasn't pushing. She moved a little closer. Gideon was watching all of this with an expression Eleanor couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe. Or relief. Or something deeper. They finished the snowman just as the sun started setting, turning the snow pink and gold. Daisy insisted on using rocks for eyes and a carrot for the nose. Norah found a stick for the mouth. Eleanor wrapped her own scarf around its neck. There, Daisy announced proudly. Now he's perfect. Not perfect, Eleanor said, but pretty good. They stood back to admire their work, 4 people and 1 lopsided snowman, while the temperature dropped and the sky darkened. We should get inside, Gideon said, before we all freeze. As they walked back to the house, Norah fell into step beside Eleanor. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not making me do the angel thing. Eleanor glanced at her. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, Norah. Not with me. The girl thought about that. The other ladies always made us do things. They said it would help us feel better. Did it? No. It just made us feel worse. Then they were doing it wrong. Norah looked up at her. What's the right way? I don't know. But I figure we'll figure it out together. Something in Norah's expression softened. They went inside, shaking snow from their coats, their cheeks red from the cold. Abigail was sitting by the fire, reading. She didn't look up when they entered. We built a snowman, Daisy announced. It's huge. Good for you, Abigail said flatly. You should have helped. I was busy. Doing what? Reading. You're always reading. Because I actually have a brain, unlike some people. Abigail, Gideon said sharply. The girl stood, slamming her book shut. I'm going to my room. She left before anyone could stop her. Daisy's face crumpled. She hates me. She doesn't hate you, Eleanor said quickly. She's just having a hard time. She's always having a hard time. Eleanor couldn't argue with that. Gideon picked Daisy up, holding her close. Your sister loves you very much. She's just not very good at showing it right now. When will she get good at it? I don't know, sweetheart, but we'll keep trying. Daisy buried her face in his shoulder. Eleanor watched them, feeling that ache in her chest again. The one that appeared whenever she saw how much this family loved each other, despite being so broken. Later that night, after the girls were in bed, Eleanor found herself standing outside Abigail's door. She knocked. Go away. Eleanor opened the door anyway. Abigail was sitting by the window, knees pulled to her chest, staring out at the dark valley. I said go away. I heard you. Eleanor stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I'm ignoring you. Why? Because you need someone to talk to and everyone else is too scared to try. Abigail's laugh was bitter. You think you're so brave. I think I'm desperate. There's a difference. The girl turned to look at her finally. What do you want from me? Nothing. Everyone wants something. Not from you. You don't owe me anything, Abigail. Not kindness, not acceptance, not even basic decency if you don't feel like giving it. Abigail frowned. Then why are you here? Because I know what it's like to be angry all the time and have nowhere to put it. You don't know anything about me. I know you found your mother dead during a storm. I know you've been trying to hold this family together ever since. I know you're exhausted and scared, and you think if you stop being angry, you'll fall apart completely. Abigail's face went pale. Who told you? Norah mentioned it. Your father filled in the rest. He shouldn't have. Probably not. But he did. Eleanor moved closer, sitting on the floor a few feet away. You want me to leave? I'll leave. But I'm not going to pretend I don't see what's happening. Nothing's happening. You're drowning, Abigail. And you've been drowning for 4 years, and nobody's thrown you a rope because they're all too busy drowning themselves. Abigail's eyes were shining with tears she refused to let fall. Don't. Don't what? Don't try to fix me. I'm not broken. I know you're not. Then stop looking at me like I am. Eleanor held her gaze. I'm not looking at you like you're broken. I'm looking at you like you're drowning. There's a difference. What difference? Broken means you can't be fixed. Drowning just means you need air. Abigail turned away, her shoulders shaking. Eleanor waited. After a long moment, Abigail spoke, her voice small and raw. I hate storms. I know. I hate winter. I know. I hate that she's gone, and I hate that Papa brought you here, and I hate that part of me wants you to stay because that feels like I'm forgetting her. There it was. The truth underneath all the anger. Eleanor's throat tightened. Letting someone new in doesn't mean forgetting someone who left. It just means making room for both. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together. Abigail wiped her eyes roughly. You say that a lot. Together. Like it actually means something. It does mean something. What? It means you're not alone anymore. Abigail looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since Eleanor arrived. I'm not ready to call you Mama, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to. And I'm still going to be difficult. I'd be disappointed if you weren't. The corner of Abigail's mouth twitched, almost a smile. You're weird. So are you. This time Abigail did smile, just barely. Can you go now? I want to be alone. Sure. Eleanor stood. But Abigail? What? Your mother would be really proud of you for taking care of your sisters, for surviving, for still being here. Abigail's face crumpled slightly. How do you know? Because I'm proud of you, and I barely know you. Someone who loved you as much as she did, she'd be bursting with it. Eleanor left before Abigail could respond, closing the door softly behind her. She leaned against the wall in the hallway, her heart pounding. Progress. Slow. Painful. Fragile. But progress. What? 2 days later, Norah got sick. It started with a cough. Nothing serious. Just a little tickle that made her clear her throat during dinner. By the next morning, she had a fever. By that afternoon, she couldn't breathe right. Eleanor found her in bed, her skin burning hot, her chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow gasps. Gideon, Eleanor called, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. Gideon, I need you. He appeared within seconds, took one look at Norah, and his face went white. No, he whispered. No, not again. Eleanor grabbed his arm. Don't do that. She's going to be fine. Sarah started like this, just a cough, then fever, then Norah is not Sarah. Eleanor said it firmly, loudly, making him focus. She's a child. Children get fevers. We're going to handle this. We can't get a doctor. The passes are buried. Then we do it ourselves. I don't know how. But I do. Gideon stared at her. What? My mother was a midwife. She taught me things. Remedies. Ways to bring down fevers. It's not much, but it's something. Eleanor moved to Norah's bedside, pressing her hand against the girl's forehead. Too hot. Way too hot. I need boiling water, clean cloths, willow bark if you have it, honey, and someone to watch the other girls. Gideon didn't move. Gideon, Eleanor said sharply. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? He nodded slowly. Then go. Get what I need, and stay out of this room until I tell you otherwise. But You falling apart won't help her, so go be useful somewhere else. It was harsh but necessary. Gideon left. Eleanor turned back to Norah, who was semi-conscious, her eyes glazed with fever. Hey, sweetheart, Eleanor said softly. I need you to stay with me, okay? I know you feel awful. I know you're scared, but you're going to be fine, I promise. Norah's lips moved, but no sound came out. Eleanor started working. She stripped the heavy blankets off, counterintuitive but necessary. Fever needed to break, not build. She opened the window slightly, letting cold air in. Then she dampened cloths with cool water and laid them across Norah's forehead, neck, and wrists. Gideon returned with supplies. Eleanor made a tea from willow bark and honey, strong and bitter. She lifted Norah's head carefully, coaxing the girl to drink. Most of it dribbled down her chin, but some went in. What else? Gideon asked. He looked terrified. Steam. We need steam. Boil water in here, as much as you can. It'll help her breathe. He set up a pot on the small stove in the corner, heating water until the room filled with warm, damp air. Eleanor changed the cloths every few minutes, keeping Norah's temperature from spiking further. She sang quietly, old songs her mother used to sing, not for Norah, but for herself, to stay calm, to stay focused. Hours passed. The fever didn't break. Abigail appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Is she going to die? No, Eleanor said firmly. Mama died like this. Norah is not your mother. But what if... Abigail, Eleanor looked up. I need you to do something for me. The girl straightened slightly. What? Daisy is scared. She's downstairs crying and nobody's with her. I need you to take care of her. Can you do that? But Norah, I'm handling Norah, but Daisy needs her sister. Can you be that for her right now? Abigail hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Thank you. The girl left. Gideon sat in the corner, his head in his hands. You should sleep, Eleanor said. I can't. You're not helping by sitting there looking terrified. I can't lose her, Eleanor. I can't lose another. You won't. Eleanor's voice was steel. I won't let you. It was a promise she had no business making, but she made it anyway. The night dragged on. Eleanor worked without stopping, changing cloths, adjusting steam, making more tea, monitoring Norah's breathing. Every time the girl's chest rose and fell, she counted it as a victory. Around 3 a.m, Norah started mumbling. Eleanor leaned closer. What is it, sweetheart? Mama? Eleanor's chest ached. No, honey, it's Eleanor. I want Mama. I know you do. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. Norah's hand reached out, grasping weakly at the air. Eleanor took it, holding tight. I'm right here, Eleanor whispered. I'm right here, and I'm not leaving. You hear me? I'm staying. Norah's grip tightened slightly. They stayed like that for hours, Eleanor holding the girl's hand, whispering promises and old songs, refusing to let go. Just before dawn, the fever broke. Norah's skin cooled. Her breathing steadied. The flesh in her cheeks faded to normal pink. Eleanor nearly collapsed with relief. She looked over at Gideon, who had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted. She's okay, Eleanor whispered. She's going to be okay. But Gideon didn't hear her, so Eleanor just sat there, holding Norah's hand, watching the sun rise through the window, and cried. Not from sadness, from exhaustion and relief and something else she couldn't name. She'd fought for this child who wasn't hers, this child she barely knew, and won. Norah woke up around noon, weak but coherent. What happened? She whispered. You got sick, Eleanor said, smiling despite how tired she was. But you're better now. I feel awful. I bet you do. Norah looked around the room. Where's Papa? Sleeping. He was up all night with you. Were you? Yeah. Why? Eleanor brushed hair off Norah's forehead. Because you needed someone to stay, and I wanted it to be me. Norah's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was dying. You weren't. I thought I was going to end up like Mama. Eleanor's throat tightened. You're not. You're going to be fine. You're going to grow up and be strong and live a long life. I promise. How do you know? Because I won't let anything else happen. It was another promise she had no business making, but the look in Nora's eyes told her it was the right one. Thank you, Norah whispered. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. The girl's hand found Eleanor's again. You saved me. Eleanor didn't know what to say to that, so she just squeezed Nora's hand and stayed. The next few days were different. Norah recovered slowly, spending most of her time in bed, but she wanted Eleanor nearby constantly, reading to her, talking to her, just sitting in silence. Abigail started helping without being asked, bringing soup, changing sheets, taking care of Daisy when everyone else was focused on Norah. And Gideon? Gideon looked at Eleanor differently, not like she was the woman he hired out of desperation, like she was someone who'd just saved his daughter's life. One night, after Norah finally fell into a real, restful sleep, Eleanor went downstairs to find him sitting by the fire. She's doing better, Eleanor said. Thanks to you. Thanks to luck. That's not true. Gideon stood, moving closer. You knew what to do. You stayed calm. You saved her when I was falling apart. You would have done the same. No, I wouldn't have. I was useless. His voice was raw. I saw Sarah dying all over again, and I froze. If you hadn't been here, but I was. Why? He looked at her intensely. Why did you fight so hard for her? You barely know her. Eleanor thought about that. Because she deserved someone to fight for her. Because she's a good kid. Because... She stopped. Because what? Because somewhere along the way I started caring about all of you, even when I didn't mean to. Gideon's expression shifted into something Eleanor couldn't read. I meant what I said, he said quietly. In the beginning, about you being free to leave, about this being a partnership, not a prison. I know. But I don't want you to leave. Eleanor's heart skipped. What? I don't want you to leave, he repeated. Not because of the girls, not because of the ranch, because of you. Gideon, I know this wasn't supposed to be that kind of marriage. I know we agreed to separate rooms and no expectations. But somewhere along the way, he ran a hand through his hair. You're the first person who's made me feel alive in 4 years. The first person who didn't tiptoe around my grief or try to fix me. You just showed up and did the work and didn't ask for anything in return. Eleanor didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to feel the same way, Gideon continued quickly. I just needed you to know, because watching you fight for Norah made me realize what I should have realized weeks ago. What's that? I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Eleanor's mind raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be practical, safe, a business arrangement. But somewhere along the way it had become more. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything. I just needed to tell you. He moved toward the stairs. Get some rest, Eleanor. You've earned it. He left her standing by the fire, her heart pounding, her mind spinning. She wasn't supposed to fall for him, wasn't supposed to fall for any of them, but she had, slowly, quietly, without meaning to. And now there was no taking it back. The snow finally started melting 2 weeks later. The passes opened. Workers could move freely again. Supplies came up from town. And with them, a letter. Gideon brought it to Eleanor, his face grim. What is it? She asked. From your old neighbor, about your father's cabin. Eleanor took the letter with shaking hands. Her father was dead. She'd known that. Had buried him herself. But reading the words made it real all over again. The cabin had burned down during a storm. Everything inside was gone, including any proof that the Graves family had ever existed. Eleanor sat down heavily. I'm sorry, Gideon said quietly. Don't be. It's just a building. It was your home. It was my past. She folded the letter carefully. And I'm not there anymore. But that night, Eleanor went outside and walked into the melting snow until she couldn't see the house anymore. Then she screamed until her throat burned and her voice broke. Screamed for her father, for her mother, for the life she'd lost. for the girl she used to be before everything fell apart. She collapsed in the snow, sobbing, not caring that she was soaking wet and freezing. Footsteps crunched behind her. Eleanor didn't turn around, didn't need to. "Go away, Gideon." "No, I want to be alone." "Too bad." She laughed, bitter and broken. "I'm fine." "You're not." "What do you want me to say? That I'm sad? That I miss him? That I feel guilty for leaving him behind to die alone?" Her voice cracked. "Because I do. I feel all of it, and I hate it." Gideon sat beside her in the snow. "You didn't leave him alone. You saved yourself. There's a difference." "Doesn't feel like it." "I know." They sat in silence for a long time. Then Eleanor heard another sound. More footsteps. She turned to see Abigail walking toward them, her face uncertain. "What are you doing out here?" Eleanor asked. "I heard you screaming." Abigail stopped a few feet away. "Are you okay?" "No." "Good." Eleanor blinked. "Good?" "Yeah, good." Abigail sat down in the snow beside her. "Everyone keeps pretending they're fine. It's annoying. At least you're honest about being a mess." Despite everything, Eleanor almost smiled. "I don't know how to do this," Abigail said quietly. "The grief thing. After Mama died, everyone kept telling me to be strong, to take care of my sisters, to hold it together. So I did. And now I don't know how to fall apart because I've been holding it together for so long I forgot how." Eleanor looked at this fierce, broken girl and saw herself. "You want to know a secret?" Eleanor said. "What?" "You don't have to figure out how to fall apart. You just have to stop holding it together, and then it happens on its own." Abigail's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can." "How?" "By letting someone catch you when you do." Abigail's face crumpled. And then she was crying, really crying, not the quiet, controlled tears she'd probably been allowing herself for years, but loud, messy, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Eleanor pulled the girl into her arms, holding her while she broke. Gideon wrapped his arms around both of them. And the three of them sat there in the melting snow, crying for all the people they'd lost and all the pain they'd been carrying alone. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't graceful, it was just real. And somehow, that made it okay. When the tears finally stopped, Abigail pulled back, wiping her face roughly. "That was embarrassing," she muttered. "No, it wasn't," Eleanor said. "I don't cry in front of people." "Well, you just did. And you're still alive." Abigail almost smiled. "Yeah, I guess I am." They walked back to the house together, soaking wet and freezing and somehow lighter than before. Inside, Norah and Daisy were waiting by the door, their faces worried. "Is everyone okay?" Norah asked. Eleanor looked at Gideon, then at Abigail, then at the two younger girls. "Yeah," she said, we're okay." And for the first time since she'd arrived, she actually believed it. Spring arrived like a promise the valley had forgotten how to believe in. The snow melted fast, turning everything to mud and rushing water. Creeks that had been frozen solid roared back to life. The cattle moved to higher pastures, workers repaired fences and barns damaged by winter's weight, and the mountain passes, buried for months, finally opened. Eleanor stood on the porch, watching the valley transform, feeling something shift inside her chest. She'd survived the winter, more than survived. She'd become part of something, part of this family, this place. Behind her, she heard laughter, real laughter. Daisy was chasing Norah through the house, both of them shrieking about something. Abigail was reading by the window, a small smile on her face that she'd probably deny if anyone pointed it out. And Gideon was in his study, working on the books, but he'd looked up when Eleanor passed and smiled at her in a way that made her stomach flip. Things were better. Not perfect, not healed, but better. Eleanor should have known it wouldn't last. The rider appeared 2 days later, coming up from the South Pass at full gallop. One of the ranch hands saw him first and came running to find Gideon. "Boss, someone's coming, riding hard." Gideon came outside, Eleanor following. They watched the rider approach, dust trailing behind him. Something about it felt wrong. The rider pulled up in front of the house, his horse lathered and breathing hard. He was young, maybe 20, with nervous eyes. "Mr. Vale?" "That's me." Got a message for you, from town. He pulled out a sealed letter. Man said it was urgent. Gideon took the letter, frowning. Who sent this? Lawyer named Morrison. Said you'd want to read it right away. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Lawyers meant trouble. Gideon opened the letter, his eyes scanning the page. With each line, his face grew darker. What is it? Eleanor asked. He handed her the letter without speaking. Eleanor read quickly, her heart sinking. Victor Vale was coming to the valley. Gideon's younger brother, the one who'd left years ago to make his fortune back east. According to the letter, he was returning with investors and lawyers. He'd filed a legal challenge claiming Gideon was mentally incompetent to run the ranch and that the entire operation should be transferred to Victor's control. The grounds for the challenge made Eleanor's blood run cold. Gideon's hasty marriage to an impoverished stranger, his years of isolation following his wife's death, his inability to maintain proper household management, his deteriorating mental state. It was all bullshit, but it was legal bullshit. When? Eleanor asked. 3 days. Gideon's voice was flat. He's bringing a judge. They're going to hold a competency hearing here, in my own house. Can they do that? Apparently they can do whatever they want. The ranch hand shifted uncomfortably. Want me to tell the men? No. Gideon folded the letter carefully. Don't tell anyone yet. I need to think. The writer left. Eleanor and Gideon stood on the porch, the spring sunshine suddenly feeling wrong. How long has it been since you've seen him? Eleanor asked. Victor, 5 years, maybe 6. You're not close. We were. Before Sarah died. Before everything fell apart. Gideon's jaw tightened. He wanted me to sell the ranch after she passed, move back east, start over. I refused. We fought. He left. Haven't heard from him since. Until now. Eleanor studied him. What does he want? Really? The valley, the ranch, everything I built. Gideon turned to look at her. Victor was never good at building things himself, but he's excellent at taking what other people make. So we fight him. We? You think I'm going to stand aside while someone tries to steal your life? Something flickered in Gideon's eyes. Gratitude, maybe. Or something deeper. Eleanor, if they prove I was incompetent when we married, they could annul it. You'd lose everything too. I didn't have anything to lose when I got here, still don't. That's not true anymore. She knew what he meant. Somewhere along the way, this place had become hers too. These girls, this valley, him. Then we make sure they can't prove anything, Eleanor said firmly. What do they have? A marriage they think was rushed. So what? People get married fast all the time. What else? Years of me barely functioning. Workers who've seen me fall apart. A house that was falling apart until you got here. A house that's not falling apart anymore. Because of you. Because of us. Eleanor grabbed his arm. Gideon, listen to me. They're going to walk in here expecting to find a broken man barely holding on. So we show them something else. We show them a functioning household, a successful ranch, a family that's thriving. We're not thriving. We're surviving. In this territory, that's the same thing. Gideon looked at her for a long moment. You really want to fight this? Do you? I don't know if I can win. Then we'll lose together, but we'll fight anyway. He almost smiled. You're terrifying sometimes. Good. Victor should be terrified too. They went inside to start preparing. They had 3 days to make everything perfect. It wasn't nearly enough time. What? Eleanor moved through the house like a woman possessed. She cleaned everything, organized everything, made lists of improvements they'd made over the winter, gathered financial records showing the ranch's success, prepared menus for the meals they'd serve while Victor and his lawyers were there. The girls watched her with wide eyes. What's happening? Norah asked. Eleanor debated lying, then decided against it. They deserved the truth. Your Uncle Victor is coming. He's trying to take the ranch away from your father. Abigail looked up sharply. Can he do that? He's going to try. Why? Because he thinks your father isn't capable of running it anymore. That's stupid, Daisy said. Papa's fine. Eleanor crouched down to her level. I know that. You know that. but we need to prove it to the people he's bringing with him. How? By showing them a happy, healthy family living in a well-run home. Abigail crossed her arms. So we're supposed to pretend everything's perfect? No, we're supposed to show them everything's good enough. What if it's not? Eleanor met the girl's eyes. Then we make it good enough. All of us. Together. Abigail was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. What do you need us to do? For the first time, Eleanor heard real determination in her voice. Help me clean. Help me organize. Help me make this house look like a home instead of a museum. We can do that, Norah said quietly. Even Daisy nodded enthusiastically. They spent the next 2 days transforming the house. Abigail went through every room, organizing and cleaning with fierce efficiency. Norah helped with the kitchen, carefully arranging dishes and polishing silver. Daisy picked flowers from the early spring blooms and put them in every room. Gideon worked on the financial records, preparing to defend every decision he'd made over the past 4 years. And Eleanor coordinated everything, her mind racing through every possible question, every possible attack, every possible weakness Victor might exploit. On the morning of the 3rd day, she stood in the parlor and surveyed their work. The house looked good, really good, warm, lived in, loved, not perfect, but real. Will it be enough? Abigail asked from the doorway. I don't know, Eleanor admitted, but it's what we've got. I don't want to lose the ranch. Neither do I. I don't want to lose you either. Eleanor turned to look at her. Abigail's face was carefully neutral, but her eyes were scared. You're not going to lose me, Eleanor said. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because even if we lose this fight, even if they take the ranch, even if they annul the marriage, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. Promise? Promise. Abigail nodded, blinking rapidly. Then she did something she'd never done before. She hugged Eleanor, quick and fierce and over before Eleanor could fully process it. But it happened. Thank you, Abigail whispered, for fighting for us. Then she left before Eleanor could respond. Eleanor stood alone in the parlor, her eyes burning, her heart full. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. Victor Vale arrived that afternoon with an entourage that made Eleanor's blood boil. 3 lawyers, 2 investors dressed in expensive Eastern suits, a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and Victor himself, tall, handsome, polished, every inch the successful businessman. He looked nothing like Gideon. Where Gideon was rough and weathered, Victor was smooth. Where Gideon was quiet, Victor was charming. Where Gideon had built something with his hands, Victor had clearly built his fortune with his mouth. Eleanor hated him on sight. Gideon, Victor said warmly, dismounting. It's been too long. Not long enough, Gideon replied flatly. Victor's smile didn't falter. Still holding grudges, I see. Some things never change. His eyes moved to Eleanor. And you must be the new Mrs. Vale. I've heard so much about you. Nothing good, I'm sure. On the contrary, my brother's sudden marriage to a frontier woman he barely knew is quite the topic of conversation. Eleanor smiled without warmth. Funny, I haven't thought about you at all. One of the lawyers coughed. Victor's smile tightened. Well, shall we go inside? We have quite a bit to discuss. They filed into the house, Victor looking around with obvious appraisal. Place looks different, he commented. More lived in. That's because people actually live here, Eleanor said. Yes, I suppose they do now. His tone suggested he found that surprising. They gathered in the parlor. The lawyers arranged papers on the table. The investors sat quietly, observing. The judge looked like he wanted a drink. Victor sat in the best chair like he already owned the place. Let's get to it, shall we? He said pleasantly. I've petitioned the territorial court to have my brother declared incompetent to manage the Vale Ranch and have control transferred to me. The grounds are quite clear. Following his wife's tragic death 4 years ago, Gideon underwent a significant mental decline. He isolated himself and his children, failed to maintain proper household management, let the house fall into disrepair, and most damningly, in a moment of clear instability, rushed into marriage with a complete stranger in what can only be described as a desperate, irrational decision. Eleanor's hands curled into fists. Gideon's face was stone. Victor continued, "Now, I don't bring this action lightly. Gideon is my brother. I love him, but love sometimes means protecting people from themselves. This ranch is too valuable, too important, to be left in the hands of someone who isn't thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly," Gideon said quietly. "Are you? You married a woman you'd known for less than a week. You've spent years hiding in these mountains. You've isolated your daughters from proper society." Victor leaned forward. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Gideon. I'm trying to help you. Let me take over the ranch. You can stay here, of course, you and your family, but let someone capable handle the actual business." "Someone like you. Someone like me." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "If we could begin the examination, we have several questions for Mr. Vale regarding his mental state and decision-making capabilities." The next hour was brutal. They questioned everything: Gideon's grief, his isolation, his parenting, his financial decisions, his marriage, especially his marriage. "You met Mrs. Vale when?" one lawyer asked. "During a blizzard. She needed help. I needed help. We made an arrangement that involved marriage." "Yes." "After knowing each other for how long?" "A few days." "And this seemed rational to you?" "It seemed practical." "Practical," the lawyer repeated, writing notes. "And was this marriage consummated?" Eleanor's face burned. Gideon's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business." "I'm afraid it is. If this marriage was merely a business arrangement, never consummated, never intended to be a real union, then it could be argued you weren't of sound mind when entering into it." "It's a real marriage," Gideon said. "Is it? You live in separate rooms, don't you?" "Lots of married people live in separate rooms." "But do they love each other, Mr. Vale? Do you love your wife?" The question hung in the air. Everyone looked at Gideon. He met Eleanor's eyes across the room. "Yes," he said quietly. "I love her." Eleanor's heart stopped. Victor leaned back, looking satisfied. A convenient answer, given the circumstances. "It's the truth," said by a man desperate to keep his ranch. Victor stood. "Gentlemen, I think we've heard enough. My brother is clearly still struggling. This marriage is obviously a facade, and this household, while superficially functional, is built on desperation, not stability." "That's not true," Abigail said. Everyone turned. The three girls stood in the doorway, Abigail in front, Norah and Daisy behind her. "Abigail," Gideon said carefully, "you should go." "No." Abigail stepped into the room, her chin raised. "If you're going to talk about our family, we should be here." Victor smiled at her. "Abigail, you've grown so much. I almost didn't recognize you." "That's because you haven't been here in 6 years." The smile faltered. "I've been busy." "Building your business, I know, Papa told us." Abigail moved closer. "You want to know if Papa's competent?" "He is." "You want to know if Eleanor's good for us?" "She is." "You want to know if we're happy? We're getting there." "Sweetheart, you're 14. You don't understand the complexities." "I understand perfectly. You want the ranch. You don't care about us. You never did." "That's not fair." "Neither is what you're doing." Abigail looked at the judge. "My father's a good man. He's been through hell. He's made mistakes. But he's trying. And Eleanor's helped us more in 4 months than anyone else did in 4 years. If you take the ranch away, you're not protecting us. You're destroying the first good thing that's happened to this family since Mama died." The room was silent. Victor's face had gone hard. "You've clearly been coached." "Nobody coached me. I'm telling the truth. A child's truth. Emotional and unreliable." "Then ask the workers," Eleanor said, standing. "Ask Martha, who cooks for us. Ask the ranch hands who see us every day. Ask anyone who's actually been here instead of making assumptions from 1,000 miles away." One of the investors spoke up. "Actually, we did speak to several workers this morning. Their accounts corroborate what the girl is saying." Victor's eyes flashed. "They're loyal to Gideon. Of course they'd support him." "Or they're telling the truth," Eleanor said. "Have you considered that?" "What I've considered, Mrs. Vale, is that you married into money and now you're desperate to keep it." "I married into grief and exhaustion. The money means nothing to me." "Easy to say." "Then let me prove it." Eleanor moved to the center of the room. "You want to question Gideon's competence? Question mine." I'm the one you think manipulated him. I'm the one you think is the problem. So ask me anything. Let's see if I'm the gold digger you're painting me as." Victor smiled coldly. "Very well. Why did you marry my brother?" "Because I needed to survive and he needed help raising his daughters. Practical. Honest. And you expect us to believe you've fallen in love with him in 4 months?" Eleanor looked at Gideon, then back at Victor. "I don't expect you to believe anything, but yes, I love him. I love his daughters. I love this valley. Not because of money, because they gave me a reason to keep going when I had nothing left." "How convenient." "It's the truth." "Truth is subjective, Mrs. Vale." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "Facts are subjective. Truth is what you do when nobody's watching. And the truth is, I've spent 4 months fighting for this family because they're worth fighting for. Not because I want something from them, because I want something with them." One of the lawyers spoke up. "Mrs. Vale, can you provide documentation of the ranch's financial status over the past 4 months?" "I can." Eleanor pulled out the ledgers she and Gideon had prepared. Cattle sales increased by 15%. Winter losses were the lowest they've been in 5 years. Workers' wages were paid on time every month. Supply costs were reduced through better management. The ranch is more profitable now than it's been since before Sarah died. She spread the papers across the table. "And the household?" another lawyer asked. 3 healthy, educated children. Meals served on time. House maintained. Medical emergencies handled. This isn't a perfect home, but it's a functional one, and it's getting better every day." The lawyers examined the papers. The judge leaned forward, actually interested now. Victor's smile was gone. "These records could be fabricated," he said. "They're not," Gideon said quietly. "Everything Eleanor just showed you is true. The ranch is thriving. My daughters are doing better. I'm doing better, because she's here. A woman you barely knew 4 months ago. A woman who saved my daughter's life when she got sick. A woman who holds this family together when I fall apart. A woman who sees me at my worst and stays anyway." Gideon stood. "You want to know if I'm competent, Victor? I am. You want to know if my marriage is real? It is. You want this ranch? You'll have to take it from me, and I promise you I won't make it easy." Victor's face was red now. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not kicking you off my land the second you arrived." "Gentlemen," the judge interrupted, "I think I've heard enough." Everyone turned to look at him. He stood, gathering his papers. "Mr. Victor Vale, your petition is denied. I see no evidence of incompetence. I see a man who's been through hardship and is rebuilding his life with help from his wife and family. That's not instability, that's resilience. Your Honor, surely. My decision is final. This hearing is concluded." The room erupted. Victor was shouting. The lawyers were arguing. The investors were backing away from the whole mess. But Eleanor only heard one thing. They'd won. Gideon crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "We did it," he whispered. "We did it," she agreed. Abigail grabbed both of them, tears streaming down her face. Norah and Daisy crashed into the group hug, everyone talking at once. Victor stood across the room watching his brother's family celebrate, his face a mask of fury and defeat. "This isn't over," he said coldly. Gideon looked up. "Yes, it is. Get off my land, Victor, and don't come back. You'll regret this." "The only thing I regret is not doing this 6 years ago." Victor left with his entourage, riding back down the mountain in humiliated silence. The family stood on the porch, watching them go. "Is it really over?" Norah asked quietly. "It's really over," Gideon confirmed. "We get to stay." "We get to stay," Daisy cheered. Norah smiled. Abigail wiped her eyes roughly, and Eleanor just breathed. They'd fought. They'd won. And somehow, in the process, they'd become exactly what Victor accused them of pretending to be. A real family. The days after Victor left felt different. Not easier. Not perfect. Just different. Like the house had been holding its breath for months and finally remembered how to exhale. Eleanor woke the morning after the hearing to find Gideon already up, standing by the window in his room. She'd gone to check on him, worried about how he'd slept after everything. His door was open. "You okay?" she asked from the doorway. He turned, and the look on his face made her chest ache, relief, exhaustion, something else she couldn't name. I keep waiting for it to feel real, he said. That we won. That he's gone. That this is actually ours. Eleanor moved closer. It is real. I know. But my brain hasn't caught up yet. He rubbed his face with both hands. For 4 years I've been waiting for everything to fall apart, waiting for someone to come take it away, waiting for proof that I was as broken as I felt. And yesterday you proved I wasn't. We weren't. He looked at her. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't have to thank me. I was protecting my home too. Is that what this is to you? Home? Eleanor thought about that. 4 months ago, she'd been starving in a collapsing cabin, watching her father die, with nothing ahead but Silas Boone and a life that would have killed her slowly. Now she was standing in a house that felt lived in and loved, with 3 girls who'd started calling her mama when they thought she wasn't listening, with a man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. Yeah, she said quietly. This is home. Gideon crossed the distance between them and kissed her. Not desperate, not urgent, just real. When they pulled apart, he pressed his forehead against hers. I meant what I said yesterday, he whispered. I love you. I know. Do you... He stopped. Do you feel the same? Eleanor thought about lying, protecting herself, keeping one foot out the door just in case, but she was tired of being careful. Yes, she said. I love you too. His smile was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. They stood there in the early morning light, holding each other, while the valley woke up around them. Footsteps in the hallway made them pull apart. Daisy appeared, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Are you kissing? Eleanor's face went red. We were just... Good, Daisy interrupted, yawning. You should kiss more. Mama and Papa used to kiss all the time before she got sick. The casual mention of Sarah should have hurt. Instead, it felt like permission. Come here, you, Gideon said, scooping Daisy up. How about we make breakfast? Let Eleanor sleep in for once. Can we make pancakes? If you promise not to burn the kitchen down. I only did that once. Eleanor laughed. You burned the kitchen down? Small fire, Gideon clarified. Very small, barely noticeable. The curtains disagree, Daisy said seriously. They headed downstairs, Daisy chattering about pancakes and whether chocolate chips counted as breakfast food. Eleanor followed, feeling something shift inside her chest. This was her life now. Morning chaos and burned curtains and a little girl who talked about her dead mother without flinching because she knew she was allowed to. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was starting to feel like enough. Later that day, Eleanor found Abigail in the library. The girl was reading, curled up in the window seat with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up when Eleanor entered. Can I come in? Eleanor asked. Abigail shrugged, which Eleanor had learned meant yes. She sat in the chair across from the window seat. I wanted to thank you for yesterday, for standing up for us. I didn't do it for you. I know. You did it for your father, for your sisters, for yourself. Abigail was quiet for a moment. Then she closed her book. I did it because Victor was wrong about all of it. He was. And because, Abigail's voice got smaller, because I don't want you to leave. Eleanor's throat tightened. I'm not leaving. You keep saying that because I keep meaning it. But what if something happens? What if Papa changes his mind? What if you realize this is too hard? Then I'll still stay. How do you know? Because I promised. And because I want to. Eleanor leaned forward. Abigail, I know you're scared. I know you've lost people and you're terrified of losing more. But you can't live your whole life waiting for everyone to leave. Sometimes people stay. Mama didn't stay. Your mama didn't choose to leave. She got sick. That's different from choosing to walk away. Abigail's eyes filled with tears. I miss her so much. I know you do. And I feel guilty. Because part of me is glad you're here, and that feels like betraying her. Eleanor moved to sit beside her on the window seat. Your mama loved you, and if she loved you, then she'd want you to be happy, even if that happiness includes someone new. You really think so? I know so, because that's what love is, wanting the people you love to keep living even after you're gone. Abigail wiped her eyes roughly. The other ladies who came here, they tried to replace Mama. like we were supposed to forget her and just accept whoever Papa brought home. I'm not trying to replace her. I know, that's why... Abigail took a shaky breath. That's why I can actually imagine you staying. Eleanor put her arm around the girl's shoulders. Abigail leaned into her, finally letting herself be held. They sat like that for a long time, watching the valley through the window, neither of them speaking. After a while, Abigail said quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When your mother died, how long did it take before you stopped feeling guilty for being happy?" Eleanor's breath caught. "I still feel guilty sometimes. Even now. Even years later." "Really?" "Really. I'll be laughing at something and suddenly I'll remember she's not here to laugh with me, and it hurts all over again." Eleanor squeezed Abigail's shoulder. "But here's what I've learned. Grief doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it better. And the guilt gets smaller when you realize that being happy doesn't mean you've forgotten. It just means you're still alive." "I want to be happy again," Abigail whispered. "I'm so tired of being sad all the time." "Then be happy. Your mama would want that." "How do you know?" "Because I'm a mama now too, and all I want is for you girls to be happy, even if it means I'm not part of that happiness anymore someday." Abigail pulled back to look at her. "You just called yourself a mama." Eleanor froze. "I didn't mean... No, it's okay." Abigail's eyes were shining. "It's okay if you are. I think I'm okay with that now." "Yeah?" "Yeah," Abigail smiled, small and tentative. "Mama Eleanor has a ring to it." Eleanor laughed through her tears. "It sounds ridiculous. Most things worth saying do." They hugged again, tighter this time. When they finally pulled apart, Abigail wiped her eyes and picked up her book again. "You can stay if you want," she said casually. "I'm just reading." "I'd like that. I'd like..." Eleanor stayed in the library with Abigail for the rest of the afternoon, neither of them talking much, just being together in comfortable silence. Sometimes silence said more than words ever could. That evening, Norah approached Eleanor in the kitchen. "Can I help with dinner?" she asked quietly. "Of course." They worked side by side, Norah peeling potatoes while Eleanor prepared the chicken. The girl was getting better at talking, more comfortable with silence, not meaning something was wrong. "Eleanor?" Norah said after a while. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Are you really going to stay forever?" Eleanor set down her knife. "Do you want me to?" Norah nodded, not looking up from the potato in her hands. "I like having you here. You make Papa smile again. And you don't get mad when I'm quiet. Being quiet isn't bad, Norah. Everyone always tells me to speak up more, to be more like Abigail. Abigail's loud because she's scared. You're quiet because you're thinking. Both are okay." Norah looked up at her. "Really? Really? You don't have to be like anyone else. You just have to be you." "But what if being me isn't enough?" Eleanor's heart broke a little. She knelt down to Norah's level. "Listen to me. You are more than enough exactly as you are. You're kind and thoughtful, and you see things other people miss because you're watching instead of talking. That's not a weakness. That's a gift." "Miss Jenkins said I was too timid." "Who's Miss Jenkins?" "One of the governesses. She said I needed to be braver, more outgoing." Eleanor felt anger flash through her. Miss Jenkins was wrong. There are lots of ways to be brave. Speaking up is one way. But staying quiet when everyone's yelling, that takes courage too. Being gentle in a hard world, that's brave. Taking your time to trust people, that's smart, not timid. Nora's eyes were wide. Nobody ever said that before. Then they weren't paying attention. Eleanor brushed hair behind Nora's ear. "I'm glad you're exactly who you are. Don't let anyone tell you different." Norah threw her arms around Eleanor's neck, holding tight. "I love you," she whispered. It was the first time any of the girls had said it out loud. Eleanor's eyes burned with tears. "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." They finished making dinner together, the kitchen filling with warmth and the smell of food and something that felt dangerously close to belonging. At dinner that night, the conversation flowed easier than it ever had before. Daisy talked about the foal that had been born that morning. Norah mentioned a bird she'd seen that she wanted to draw. Abigail complained about a book she was reading, but in a way that suggested she was actually enjoying it. and Gideon watched all of it with something like wonder on his face. After the girls went to bed, he found Eleanor on the porch. "Today was good," he said, sitting beside her. "Today was really good." "They're different, all of them, lighter somehow." Eleanor smiled. "They're healing, takes time. You did that. We did that. Together." Gideon was quiet for a moment, then said, "I need to tell you something." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "Okay. I went to see Sarah's grave today, after everything with Victor. I needed to talk to her." Eleanor's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice steady. "What did you say?" "I told her about you. About what you've done for the girls. For me." He looked at Eleanor. "And I told her I was sorry." "For what?" "For taking so long to let her go. For making the girls carry my grief. For nearly losing everything because I was too broken to see what I still had." His voice cracked. "For falling in love with someone else." Eleanor moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "You don't have to apologize for moving on." "I feel like I do, like I'm betraying her." "Would she want you to spend the rest of your life alone?" "No, she'd be furious." He almost smiled. Sarah was practical about everything. She used to say life was too short to waste on suffering, that if something happened to her, I better not turn into one of those pathetic widowers who gave up on living. Sounds like she was smart. She was, and stubborn, and she would have liked you, I think. "Yeah? Yeah, you're both fighters, both refuse to let anything keep you down." Gideon squeezed her hand. "I told her that too, that you were the kind of woman who'd walk through fire to protect the people you love, that you saved us when we couldn't save ourselves, and that I hoped she understood why I needed to move forward." "What did she say?" Gideon smiled sadly. "Nothing, obviously. But the wind picked up right then, moving through the trees, and I swear it sounded like her laugh. Like she was telling me I was being an idiot for waiting so long." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Maybe she was." "Maybe." He turned to look at her. "But so are you, and strong. And you make me believe we can actually get through this. We can. We will." Gideon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Eleanor's heart started racing. "I know we're already married," he said. "I know we did it for practical reasons, standing in your father's cabin with nothing but desperation between us. But I want to do this right, the way I should have done it from the beginning." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small diamond that caught the starlight. "This was my mother's," he said. "She gave it to me before she died. Said I should give it to someone who deserved it, someone who'd earned it." He looked at Eleanor. "You've earned it 1,000 times over." "Gideon, let me finish." He took a breath. "Eleanor Graves Vale, I know we started this marriage as a business arrangement. I know we both came into it broken and desperate and not knowing if we'd survive. But somewhere along the way, you became the best thing that ever happened to me. You brought my family back to life. You made me remember what it feels like to actually live instead of just survive. You showed me that broken people can heal if someone's willing to sit with them in the dark." He got down on one knee. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "So I'm asking you now properly, with no contracts or conditions or escape clauses. Will you marry me again? Will you choose me not because you have to, but because you want to? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love, for as long as we both shall live?" Eleanor looked at this man who'd ridden out of a blizzard and offered her a lifeline when she had nothing left. This man who was scarred and broken and trying so hard to be better. This man who loved his daughters fiercely and cried when he thought no one was watching and made her feel like she'd finally come home. "Yes," she whispered. "Every day for the rest of my life. Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. Then he kissed her, and it tasted like tears and promises and second chances. When they pulled apart, Eleanor laughed through her crying. "We're already married, you know. This changes nothing legally." "It changes everything that matters," Gideon said. "The first time we got married, we were saving each other. This time, we're choosing each other. That's different." "Yeah," Eleanor agreed, looking at the ring on her finger. "It is." They sat on the porch for hours, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the ranch, discussing the girls, imagining a future that felt possible now, instead of impossible. The next morning, Eleanor woke to find all three girls sitting at the foot of her bed. "You're wearing a ring," Daisy said, pointing. Eleanor looked at the gold band on her finger, joining the simple one from their first wedding. "I am." "Does that mean you're really married now?" Norah asked. "It means your father asked me to marry him again, properly this time." Abigail's eyes were red like she'd been crying. "And you said yes." "I said yes." Daisy threw herself at Eleanor, hugging her so tight it hurt. "That means you can't leave now. You're stuck with us forever." Eleanor laughed, holding the little girl close. "I guess I am." Norah climbed onto the bed too, carefully, like she was still afraid of being pushed away. Eleanor pulled her close with her other arm. Abigail stayed at the foot of the bed watching. "You can come here too," Eleanor said gently. "I'm fine where I am." "Abigail, I'm happy for you," Abigail said quickly. "For you and Papa. I am. I just—" She stopped, her voice breaking. "I just need a minute to be sad that it's not Mama." Eleanor's heart ached. "That's okay. You can be happy and sad at the same time. Both are allowed." "Really? Really? Those feelings don't cancel each other out. They just exist together." Eleanor held out her hand. "Come here, sweetheart." Abigail hesitated for a long moment. Then she moved forward and let Eleanor pull her into the embrace. All four of them sat there on the bed, tangled together, crying and laughing at the same time. "Can we have a wedding?" Daisy asked suddenly. "A real one? With cake?" Eleanor laughed. "We're already married, remember? But we didn't get to see the first one. And Nora's never been to a wedding, and I want cake." "Cake is not a reason to have a wedding. Cake is always a reason," Daisy said seriously. Gideon appeared in the doorway. "What's this about cake?" "Daisy wants us to have a wedding," Eleanor explained. "A real one. We are really married." "But we should celebrate," Norah said quietly, "like Mama and Papa did. You told us they had a party and everything." Gideon and Eleanor exchanged glances. "It would be nice," Abigail admitted, "having something happy to remember, instead of just—" She trailed off, but they all knew what she meant. Instead of just funerals and grief and loss. "All right," Gideon said. "Let's have a wedding." The girls cheered. Eleanor laughed despite herself. "You know this is ridiculous, right?" "Most good things are," Gideon said, grinning. They spent the next 2 weeks preparing. It wasn't going to be anything fancy, just family and the ranch workers. A simple ceremony followed by dinner and dancing on the front lawn. But the girls threw themselves into planning like it was the most important event in history. Abigail took charge of decorations, hanging flowers and ribbons everywhere. Norah drew invitations for everyone on the ranch, each one unique and beautiful. Daisy appointed herself in charge of cake tasting, which mostly involved eating a lot of cake. Eleanor watched them transform with something like wonder. These were the same girls who'd barely spoken 4 months ago, who'd moved through the house like ghosts, who'd been so buried in grief they couldn't see daylight. Now they were laughing, planning, living. One afternoon, Eleanor found Abigail sitting on the porch with a box of Sarah's things. "What are you doing?" Eleanor asked carefully. "Going through Mama's stuff. Papa said it was okay." Abigail pulled out a dress, pale blue with delicate lace. This was her wedding dress. She wore it when she married Papa. Eleanor's throat tightened. "It's beautiful." "I thought—" Abigail hesitated. "I thought maybe you could wear it for the ceremony." Eleanor stared at her. "Abigail, I can't—" "Why not?" "Because it's your mother's. It's special." "Exactly. That's why you should wear it." Abigail held it up. "You're not replacing her, but you're part of this family now, part of our story, and I think she'd want you to have it, to wear it, to make new memories in it." Eleanor's eyes burned with tears. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Abigail smiled, and it was real and full and unburdened. "Besides, it'll fit you better than it fit her. Mama was shorter than you. She had to get it hemmed 3 times. Eleanor laughed through her tears and took the dress. It smelled like cedar from storage, but underneath she could almost catch the ghost of perfume. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you," Abigail replied, "for giving us a reason to celebrate again." The day of the wedding arrived bright and clear. Summer had fully arrived, turning the valley into something out of a painting. Wildflowers covered every surface. The sky was impossibly blue. Even the cattle seemed to sense something special was happening. Eleanor stood in her room, wearing Sarah's wedding dress, looking at herself in the mirror. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," Eleanor called. All three girls entered, dressed in their best dresses, flowers in their hair. They stopped when they saw her. "You look beautiful," Norah breathed. "Like a princess," Daisy added. Abigail didn't say anything, just looked at Eleanor wearing her mother's dress and smiled with tears running down her face. "You okay?" Eleanor asked. "Yeah," Abigail said. "I am. Mama would have loved this. She would have loved you." Eleanor pulled all three girls into a hug, careful not to crush the flowers or wrinkle the dress. "I love you girls," she said. "All of you. So much." "We love you too," they said in unison. "Even when I'm difficult?" Abigail asked. "Especially then." They walked downstairs together, the four of them, a family. Gideon was waiting outside dressed in his best suit, looking nervous and happy and more alive than Eleanor had ever seen him. The workers had gathered on the lawn. Martha was crying already. The ranch hands looked uncomfortable in their clean clothes, but happy to be there. And standing at the front, ready to officiate, was the judge who'd ruled in their favor against Victor. He'd agreed to come back and make this official, proper, legal in every sense that mattered. Eleanor walked toward Gideon, her girls beside her, and felt something settle in her chest. This was right. All of it. The grief they'd carried, the healing they'd done, the family they'd become. Right. The ceremony was simple. The judge talked about love and partnership and choosing each other every day, about how marriage wasn't about perfect moments, but about showing up for the imperfect ones. Gideon and Eleanor exchanged vows they'd written themselves. "I promise to choose you," Gideon said, his voice steady. "Every morning, every night, every hard moment, and every easy one. I promise to be your partner, not your owner, your equal, not your superior. I promise to love these girls with you and to never let you carry this family alone again." Eleanor's turn. "I promise to stay," she said, looking at Gideon, then at the girls, then back. "Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to fight for this family, to protect what we've built, and to never let fear make me run. I promise to love you and these beautiful, messy, complicated girls for as long as I'm breathing." They exchanged rings. The judge pronounced them married. Again. For real this time. Gideon kissed her, and everyone cheered. The party lasted into the night. They ate until they couldn't move, danced until their feet hurt, laughed until their sides ached. Daisy got to eat all the cake she wanted and made herself sick. Norah danced with her father, standing on his feet like he used to do with her when she was smaller. Abigail caught the bouquet and immediately declared she was never getting married, which made everyone laugh. Eleanor watched all of it from the porch, her heart so full it hurt. Martha came to stand beside her. "You did good," the older woman said. "Real good. I didn't do anything special. You stayed. That's the most special thing there is." Martha looked at her. "I've worked for this family for 12 years. Watched them fall apart after Sarah died. Watched Gideon turn into a ghost. Watched those girls forget how to be children. And I thought it was over. Thought they'd never recover. But then you showed up. And you didn't fix everything. You didn't make it easy. But you stayed anyway. And that made all the difference." Eleanor's eyes burned. "I almost left. So many times in the beginning. I almost packed my bag and walked down that mountain. But you didn't." "No, I didn't. Why not?" Eleanor thought about that. "Because leaving would have been easier, and I was tired of taking the easy way out." Martha nodded like that made perfect sense. "Those girls are lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one." "Nah, you're all lucky. That's how family works." She walked away, leaving Eleanor alone with her thoughts. Gideon found her a few minutes later. "You're not at your own party," he observed. "Just taking a break. Watching." "What are you watching?" "Everything. Everyone. Trying to memorize it." "Why?" "Because I spent so much of my life surviving that I forgot to actually live. I don't want to forget this, any of this." Gideon pulled her close. "You won't forget. We won't let you." They stood there, holding each other, while their families celebrated around them. This was it. This was everything she'd fought for. Not perfection, not some fairy tale where everything worked out easily. Just this. Real life with real people who were messy and broken and trying anyway. Later that night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Eleanor and Gideon walked up to Sarah's grave. Eleanor carried a bouquet of wildflowers. "I wanted to come up here," she said quietly, "to say thank you." For what? For loving them so well. For teaching them what family means. For making Gideon into someone capable of loving again. She placed the flowers on the grave. And for the dress. Abigail said you would have wanted me to wear it. I hope that's true. The wind rustled through the trees. Gideon stepped forward, kneeling beside the grave. "I'll always love you," he said to Sarah. "You'll always be part of me. But I'm not yours anymore, not completely, and I hope that's okay." Silence. Then a bird called from somewhere in the trees, clear and beautiful. Eleanor took it as an answer. They walked back down the hill, hand in hand, leaving flowers on the grave and some of their grief with it. The house was quiet when they entered. The girls were asleep, exhausted from celebrating. Eleanor and Gideon went to their room. Not separate rooms anymore. Their room. "I can't believe we actually did this," Eleanor said, sitting on the bed. "Which part? Getting married again? Throwing a party? Surviving Victor? All of it. Any of it." She looked at him. 6 months ago, I was watching my father die with no future ahead of me. Now I'm sitting here in a house that feels like home with a family I'd die to protect. You won't have to die. We've already survived the worst. You don't know that. No. But I know we'll face whatever comes together. Eleanor lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. What happens now? What do you mean? We've won. We've survived. We've built this family. What comes next? Gideon lay beside her, taking her hand. We keep going. We keep showing up. We keep choosing each other. That's it? That's everything. Eleanor rolled to face him. It sounds too simple. The best things usually are. They fell asleep like that, holding each other, while the valley dreamed around them. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Not perfect, not easy, but good. Abigail started smiling more, laughing more, letting herself be young instead of carrying the weight of the world. She even started playing the piano again, filling the house with music for the first time in years. Norah came out of her shell slowly but surely. She talked more, shared her drawings, started expressing opinions instead of just agreeing with everyone. Daisy became attached to Eleanor's hip, following her everywhere, asking constant questions, soaking up attention like she'd been starving for it her whole life. And Gideon was a different man than the one Eleanor had married in that freezing cabin. He laughed. He played. He lived. One afternoon in late summer, Eleanor was working in the garden when she heard raised voices from inside the house. She hurried in to find Abigail and Gideon in the middle of an argument. "You can't tell me what to do," Abigail was saying, her face red. "I'm not telling you. I'm asking you. It's the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. I'm 14, I can make my own decisions. You're 14. You think you can make your own decisions. There's a difference." Abigail spotted Eleanor in the doorway. Tell him he's being unreasonable." Eleanor looked between them. "What's going on?" "She wants to ride into town alone," Gideon said. "By herself. Through the mountain passes. And he won't let me because he thinks I'm a baby." "I think you're reckless. There's a difference." Eleanor held up her hands. "Okay, everyone take a breath." They both turned to her, expecting her to pick a side. "Abigail, why do you want to go to town?" Eleanor asked. "Because I'm tired of being stuck in this valley. I want to see people who aren't ranch hands and my sisters." "That's fair. Gideon, why don't you want her to go?" "Because the passes are dangerous. Because she's 14. Because 100 things could go wrong." "Also fair." Eleanor looked at Abigail. "What if you don't go alone? What if your father takes you, or I do?" "That's not the same as going by myself." "No, but it's a compromise." Abigail looked like she wanted to argue. Then she sighed. "Fine, but I want to go tomorrow." "Deal," Gideon said immediately. Abigail stomped upstairs. Gideon looked at Eleanor. "Thank you. Don't thank me. She's going to be impossible tomorrow. She's impossible every day." "True," Eleanor smiled. "But she's also brave and stubborn and smart. Wonder who she gets that from. Definitely her mother. Both of them. Gideon pulled her close. How do you do that? Do what? Make everything seem manageable. Make us all seem capable. Because you are capable. You just forget sometimes. I don't forget when you're around. Good. Then I'll stay around. They kissed, slow and sweet, while upstairs Abigail slammed doors and downstairs the world kept turning. That night at dinner, Daisy had an announcement. I'm going to be a rancher when I grow up, she declared. Like Papa. Gideon smiled. Yeah? Yeah. I'm going to have the biggest ranch in the whole territory, with 1 million cows. That's a lot of cows, Eleanor said. I like cows. What about you, Norah? Gideon asked. What do you want to be? Norah thought for a long moment. An artist. I want to draw pictures that make people feel things. You already do that, sweetheart, Eleanor said. Your drawings are beautiful. Really? Really? What about you, Abigail? Gideon asked. What do you want? Abigail was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I want to be like Eleanor. Everyone looked at her. Like me? Eleanor repeated. Yeah, strong enough to survive anything. Brave enough to stay when things get hard. Smart enough to know when to fight and when to compromise. Abigail met Eleanor's eyes. You're the bravest person I know. Eleanor's throat tightened. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Same thing sometimes. They finished dinner, the conversation flowing easier than it ever had before, and Eleanor realized something. This was what healing looked like. Not a straight line, not a smooth path, just people showing up for each other, day after day, making it work. A week later, a letter arrived from town. Eleanor opened it while Gideon was working and the girls were outside playing. It was from the territorial government. Victor Vale had officially dropped all claims to the ranch. The property was legally, permanently, irrevocably theirs. No one could ever challenge it again. Eleanor sat down heavily, the letter shaking in her hands. It was over. All of it. The fear, the uncertainty, the waiting for the other shoe to drop. Over. Eleanor? Gideon appeared in the doorway. What's wrong? She handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his eyes widening. It's done, he said, his voice stunned. It's actually done. It's done. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then they both started laughing. Not because anything was funny, just because they could. Because they'd survived, because they'd won, because they were still here. The girls came running at the sound of laughter, asking what was happening. Gideon picked up Daisy and spun her around. We're celebrating. We won. Everything's ours, forever. Can we have cake? Daisy asked immediately. We just had a wedding with cake. But this is different cake. Victory cake. Eleanor laughed. Sure, why not? Let's have victory cake. They celebrated with dinner outside that night. The whole family gathered on the porch while the sun set over the mountains. Tell us a story, Daisy demanded between bites of cake. About when you first got here. Eleanor thought for a moment. All right, when I first arrived, I was terrified of all of you. You were not, Abigail said. I absolutely was. You were angry all the time. Norah wouldn't talk. Daisy cried constantly, and your father looked like he was barely holding it together. That's because he wasn't, Gideon said. None of us were, Abigail added. We were a disaster. You were grieving. There's a difference. What changed? Norah asked quietly. Eleanor looked at each of them. We started choosing each other. Every day. Even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. We stopped waiting for someone to save us and started saving each other. That's a good story, Daisy said. It's our story, Eleanor replied. And it's not over yet. They talked long into the night, sharing memories, making plans, being a family. Later, after everyone else had gone to bed, Eleanor stood on the porch alone, looking out at the valley. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, desperate, starving, watching her father die with no hope left. She thought about the choice she'd made, marrying a stranger, riding into the mountains, choosing survival over surrender. She thought about how terrified she'd been, how certain she'd been that this was just another way to slowly die. And she thought about what she'd found instead, a family that needed her as much as she needed them, girls who called her mama, a man who loved her not despite her brokenness, but because she understood his. A home. Not the one she'd left behind, not the one she'd planned on, but the one she'd built from grief and courage and impossible choices. "Come to bed," Gideon said from the doorway. Eleanor turned to look at him. "In a minute." "What are you thinking about?" "How different everything is from what I expected." "Good different or bad different?" She smiled. "Good. Really, really good." He moved to stand beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist. They stood together in the darkness, listening to the valley breathe. "You know what scares me most?" Eleanor said quietly. "What?" "How much I love this. All of it. Because loving something means it can be taken away." "It can," Gideon agreed. "But that's not a reason not to love it. That's just the price we pay for being alive." "High price." "Worth it, though." Eleanor leaned into him. "Yeah, it is." They stayed there until the stars came out, holding each other, grateful for what they had and not taking any of it for granted. The months that followed were good, not perfect. There were still hard days, days when Abigail regressed into anger, days when Norah went silent for no reason Eleanor could figure out, days when Daisy cried for her first mama and nothing could console her, days when Gideon woke up sad and couldn't explain why, days when Eleanor herself felt overwhelmed by the weight of being responsible for so many people. But they got through them, together. That was the difference. They weren't alone anymore. One cold morning in early autumn, Eleanor found herself standing on the hill where Sarah was buried. She'd been coming up here regularly now, bringing flowers, talking to a woman she'd never met but felt connected to anyway. "I don't know if you can hear me," Eleanor said, placing fresh wildflowers on the grave. "I never know what I believe about that stuff. But just in case..." She sat down in the grass. "They're doing good. All of them. Abigail's playing piano again. Nora's talking more. Daisy barely cries anymore. And Gideon," she smiled, "Gideon's laughing, real laughing, the kind that comes from deep in his chest and makes his whole face light up." The wind rustled through the trees. "I'm not trying to replace you. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. You'll always be their mother. You'll always be the woman Gideon married first. But I hope there's room for both of us in their hearts. I hope you don't mind me being here." A bird landed on the headstone, bold and unafraid. Eleanor took it as a sign. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything you gave them, for making them who they are, for loving them so well they know what real love looks like." She stood, brushing grass off her skirt. "I'll take care of them. I promise. For as long as I'm here, I'll protect what you built." The bird flew away. Eleanor walked back down the hill, feeling lighter than when she'd climbed it. That night, she told Gideon about her visit. "You talk to her?" he asked. "Sometimes? Is that weird?" "No, I think it's nice." He pulled her close. "She would have liked you, really liked you." "How do you know?" "Because she hated people who were all talk and no action. You're all action." Eleanor laughed. "I don't know if that's a compliment." "It's the highest compliment Sarah could give." They lay in bed, talking about nothing and everything, until they fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Abigail came running into the kitchen, waving a letter. "Papa, Eleanor, come quick." They rushed out to find her, breathless and smiling wider than Eleanor had ever seen. "What is it?" Gideon asked. "It's from the county. They're building a new school in town. They need a teacher. They want to know if any girls from the valley want to attend." "A real school?" Norah breathed. "A real school," Abigail confirmed, "with other students and books and everything." Eleanor and Gideon exchanged glances. "It would mean riding into town every week," Gideon said carefully, "staying there during the week, only coming home on weekends." Abigail's face fell. "Oh, I didn't think about that." "But," Eleanor added quickly, "it would also mean getting an education, making friends, seeing more of the world." "Could we?" Norah asked quietly. "Could we really go?" Gideon looked at Eleanor. She nodded. "Yeah," he said. "You can go, if you want to." All three girls erupted in excited chatter. Later, after they'd run off to plan what they'd bring, Gideon turned to Eleanor. "Are we making a mistake, letting them go?" "Maybe, but keeping them locked up here would be worse." "I'll miss them." Me too, but that's part of letting them grow up. I'm not ready. Eleanor took his hand. Nobody's ever ready. That's the whole point. The day they took the girls to school was harder than Eleanor expected. They rode into town together, all of them crowded onto 2 horses, bags packed with clothes and supplies. The school was small but clean. The teacher, Miss Patterson, was young and enthusiastic and clearly excited to have new students. "We'll take good care of them," she assured Gideon. "I know," he said, though his face said he didn't entirely believe it. They said goodbye outside. Daisy cried. Norah looked scared. Even Abigail seemed nervous despite her excitement. "You'll be okay," Eleanor told them. "All of you. And we'll be back on Friday to get you." "What if I don't like it?" Daisy asked. "Then we'll figure something else out. But give it a chance first. What if the other kids don't like me? Then they're idiots. And you don't need people like that anyway." Abigail hugged Eleanor suddenly, fiercely. "Thank you for letting us do this. Thank you for being brave enough to try." They rode back to the valley in silence, the absence of the girls loud between them. "The house is going to be so quiet," Gideon said. "Yeah, too quiet." "We'll adjust." "Will we?" Eleanor looked at him. "We'll have to. This is what we fought for, remember? For them to have choices, to have futures, to be more than just their grief." "I know. Doesn't make it easier." Nothing worth doing is easy. They got home to find the house exactly as they'd left it, but it felt different, emptier. Eleanor walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. This was what success looked like, not holding on so tight you couldn't let go, but loving enough to release. That night, she and Gideon had dinner alone for the first time in months. "This is weird," he said. "Very weird." "What do we do now?" Eleanor smiled. "Whatever we want. We've got 5 whole days before they come back." 5 days is nothing. Then let's make them count. They spent the next few days rediscovering each other. Not as parents, not as ranch managers, just as 2 people who'd fallen in love in the middle of chaos. They rode out to the far corners of the valley, picnicked by the stream, talked about dreams they'd set aside and goals they wanted to achieve. "I want to expand the herd," Gideon said one afternoon. "Maybe try breeding better stock." "You should. And I want to build a better bunkhouse for the workers. The current one's falling apart." "Good idea." "What about you?" he asked. "What do you want?" Eleanor thought about that. "I want to start a garden, a real one, with vegetables and herbs and maybe some flowers. Something that's mine. The whole valley is yours." "I know, but I want something I built with my own hands, something that grows because I tended it." Gideon smiled. "We'll start it next spring." "Promise?" "Promise." Friday came too fast. They rode back into town to pick up the girls, nervous about what they'd find. But when Abigail, Norah, and Daisy came running out of the schoolhouse, they were smiling. "How was it?" Eleanor asked. "Amazing," Abigail said. "I learned about geography and history, and Miss Patterson says I'm advanced for my age." "I made a friend," Norah added shyly. "Her name is Emma, and she likes to draw too." "And I learned to read a whole book," Daisy said proudly, "by myself." They chattered the whole way home, talking over each other, excited and happy and growing up right before Eleanor's eyes. That night, with all 3 girls back in their beds and the house full again, Eleanor stood on the porch looking at the stars. Gideon found her there. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how much has changed, how much we've all changed." She leaned against him. 6 months ago, I couldn't imagine any of this. Now I can't imagine anything else. Me neither. We did it, didn't we? We actually survived. "We did better than survive," Gideon said. "We learned to live." Eleanor thought about that. He was right. They'd done more than just survive. They'd built something real, something lasting, something worth protecting. A family. Not perfect. Not without scars. But real. The winter that followed was gentler than the one before. The girls went to school during the week and came home on weekends. Abigail thrived in her studies. Norah made friends. Daisy learned to read and write and never stopped talking about it. And Eleanor and Gideon used their alone time to strengthen their marriage, to remember they were more than just parents and ranch managers, that they were partners who'd chosen each other. On the anniversary of their first wedding, Gideon took Eleanor up to the highest peak in the valley. "Why are we climbing the mountain?" she asked, out of breath. "You'll see." When they reached the top, Eleanor understood. The entire valley spread out below them, every building, every pasture, every corner of the empire they'd fought to protect. "This is ours," Gideon said. "All of it, forever." "It's too much to see at once." "That's why I brought you here, so you could see what you saved." Eleanor looked at him. "We saved it together. You saved me first. The valley came after." She took his hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For riding out of that blizzard. For offering me honesty when everyone else was offering lies. For giving me a reason to keep going when I thought I had nothing left. You gave me the same thing." They stood on the peak holding hands, watching their valley breathe below them. This was it. This was everything. Not perfect, not without cost, but theirs. Years later, people would still talk about Eleanor Vale, the frontier woman who rode into the mountains beside a stranger and became a legend, who saved a family from drowning in grief, who proved that sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances, who stayed when everyone else left. The girls grew up strong and capable. Abigail became a teacher, fierce and brilliant and uncompromising. Norah became an artist whose work hung in galleries across the territory. Daisy took over the ranch and expanded it into one of the largest operations in the West. And Eleanor and Gideon grew old together in the house on the hill, watching their family flourish, grateful for every single day. On quiet evenings, when the valley settled into darkness and the stars came out, Eleanor would stand on the porch and remember. Remember the woman she'd been, broken and desperate and convinced she'd die alone. Remember the choice she'd made, the mountain she'd climbed, the family she'd built. Remember that grief doesn't last forever if you let yourself heal, that broken things can be beautiful if you let them, that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best lives, and that staying is always harder than leaving, but staying is what makes everything worth it. She'd entered the valley as a desperate stranger trying to survive. She'd become the woman who taught a broken house how to live again. And long after the snow melted from the mountains, long after the hardship faded into memory, one truth remained. Eleanor Vale had walked through winter and found spring waiting on the other side. Not because everything worked out perfectly, but because she kept showing up every single day, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Because that's what love is. Showing up, staying, choosing each other again and again and again. That's the lesson Eleanor learned in that valley. That's the lesson she taught everyone who knew her. That surviving isn't the same as living. And living means staying long enough to see broken things heal, to see grief transform into gratitude, to see winter give way to spring. She stayed. And that made all the difference.